Steve Shale is down in Florida. He was Barack Obama's campaign manager in 2008 when he won the state, and then the kind of Uber advisor for 2012 when during the re-election when he also won the state. Nobody would have bet on it. So he knows a lot about Florida. The thing I also want you to know, so we're talking to Steve Shale because he's helping to run this super PAC that's helping Joe Biden out called Unite the Country. So here we are. So I got to ask you, the polls are all saying Joe Biden's ahead, not just in, well, we'll get to Florida in a second, but the polls are all saying Joe Biden's ahead all over the country. Should we be believing this, or does Donald Trump have some more juju going on in the back end, some hocus pocus that we all need to be worried about?
Well, first of all, I think all of us that want to see change in the country, the PTSD is healthy. You know, I was on the phone with our mutual friend Paul Begala a couple of days ago. Talked about the primal scream he has every morning when he wakes up. And, you know, I mean, listen, if you take the PTSD hat off and you look at it just objectively, you know, Joe Biden's in a better place than Secretary Clinton was at this point in almost every battleground state, not just from a standpoint of like the margin, but, you know, as you and I both know, and we talked about this a lot in 2016, there was always room for Trump to grow. You know, there were very few polls in battleground states that ever had her above 50%. There was always this, like, it seemed like every time she would have something good happen, like she would immediately kind of get kicked back down. You know, just, you know, this time it's different. I mean, Biden's been, you know, like our own Unite the Country polling, which is looks pretty similar to the national. I mean, not the national, but the, you know, the state polls you see. Biden's above 50 in most of these battleground states. Trump's vote to not reelect, in other words, would you vote to reelect him or not, is over 50 to not reelect. But these are still close races. I mean, I think our last poll, we had Pennsylvania like 52-47. I mean, that's not, that's how the margin of error, but that's certainly not put away. And so, you know, I think that, you know, folks just got to keep working all the way through the election.
What's happening out there that could make us wrong about Joe Biden's appeal? And this is really something that's happening that Trump can pull out a win.
Yeah, I think there are two things. You know, one, you know, some of our old Obama friends remind me frequently that we all forget. We all talk about expansion audiences on our side. How do we get more younger African-American men? How do we get more Latino voters, et cetera, out to the polls? We forget that, you know, there's a significant room for them to grow among non-college whites. You know, places like Wisconsin, I think that was, the stat may be a little bit wrong, but it's in the ballpark. There's like 5 times as many non-college white men who didn't vote in Wisconsin as there are African-American men under 40. And so, you know, I think, you know, he has potential room to expand the electorate as well. Now, you know, fortunately, like in the early voting we're seeing around the country, you're not seeing a lot of that, but I think that could definitely grow. And I
usually we're not seeing it, but there are some reports that voter registrations were up in that group, right?
Yeah, and it's hard to know what driving that. I mean, so, you know, like in my state, historically, most of the voter registration happens within 4 to 6 months of a presidential election cycle. That's just when people are paying attention, you know, all that. You know, the Biden campaign made the decision, which is perfectly defensible, not to do in-person campaigning for all the entire summer. And so it's hard to know how much of that is a function of, like, you know, the real enthusiasm, and how much of that's like, it was just, you know, it was an NFL team playing the Jaguars right now. It's a one-way competition. You know, trust me. So
shade.
But you know, but even they're sort of interesting. I think there's another thing going on, you know, and this has been, you know, this has been going on for a while. Younger voters of color are not registering with a political party. And so, you know, you take Florida, Republicans have made gains in Florida, but it's because, frankly, like, white conservatives are registering as Republicans, and younger voters of color and younger white progressives who are white are splitting the registration between Democrats and NPA.
So NPA, which is no party affiliation, right? And so you're seeing, if you add up the two of those, I mean, there's a growth in NPA registrations.
Yeah. So actually, the fastest growing political party in Florida is Nonparty.
Is what, 20 something percent?
Oh, it'll be like 26-27% of the electorate this time. But so example of that. So in Florida, and this is obviously a little different than the upper Midwest. In Florida, Republicans have seen a net gain in their registration since 2016. At the same time, the percentage of registered voters that are from communities of color has grown from 36 to 39% over the same 4 years. And so, in the end, like, yeah, there's more Republicans, now there's also evidence that probably almost half of their growth has come from, frankly, white people that have voted for Republicans for 40 years down here who finally just,
finally said it.
Yeah. And a lot of those rural counties up north Florida that, for years had Democratic county commissions. And so you had Republicans at the top of the ticket, Democrats down ballot. So if you wanted to vote in primaries, you had to be a Democrat. A lot of that's finally changed. And so, but yeah, I mean, so in the end, like, a more Republican electorate probably in Florida helps them, obviously. A more diverse electorate helps us. And so, like everything, it kind of balances itself out.
All right, so Florida. So 48, 40, what am I looking at here? UNF has 48-47 from the other day. Mason-Dixon, 48-45. So that's close. Nobody's at 50 in these recent spate of polls. So what's happening? Is Florida gettable?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's better today than it was in 2012. I mean, at least if you look at the statewide polling, it's probably comparable to where it was in 2016. I mean, the things that that are interesting about the state this year is Joe Biden's doing better among just white people, mostly suburban white women and white seniors, and that's why he's doing well. In some poll, if you believe the exits, and I think the exits were a little bit off last time. The exits had Hillary Clinton winning 32% of white voters. I think it was more like 34 or 35. But they've got, most of them have Biden getting 38, 39, 40% of the white vote. If he gets up around 40, he's going to win. I mean,
that's about where Obama was in 12, right?
So we were in 08, we were 41.
Or yeah, in 08 it was bigger.
And in 12, we were like 37, 38.
Okay. Oh yeah. So in that electorate, and I imagine the electorate is more Black and brown than it was.
Yeah. So if
you get a bigger share of white voters and more African American Latinos who maybe are voting for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Latino vote is dipped, right? Like we've seen some Latino dip.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So if you took the 2012 like electorate, I mean, the vote model and applied it to today, like Obama, we would have won the re-election by probably 2 or 2.5 points because again, there are fewer whites and there are more communities of color. The Latino vote's been it has dipped. It's actually getting better. Like, I mean, the most polling you're seeing it sort of trend in the right way. That's not uncommon, that number kind of grows late. And honestly, like, I mean, I think
Can you tell geographically where that's occurring? Is it Orlando? Is it Dade County? Where?
Yeah, so your Puerto Rican voter in Central Florida remains very strong. And now the challenge there is that voter turnout tends to be lower, and so there's a lot of mobilization work. Down south, I mean, the battle for the Cubans and then the non-Cubans in South Florida tend to be Venezuelan, Nicaraguan, Colombian, et cetera. More conservative exiles to begin with. And I think that the Biden campaign has done a ton of things right. If there's one thing that was people criticized early on, probably fair, is we're a little slow to kind of get on the Spanish language communication in Dade. But I think that they've frankly overcorrected in a way that's been good. So,
right.
And I think you're seeing, in Florida too, as in most states, the Black population is entirely African American. In Florida, about maybe 20%, 25% of our Black population is Caribbean.
Haitians, right?
Yeah,
Bahamians.
And so there's also the same way that like there's different kind of work you have to do with non-Cubans and Cubans. There's different kind of work you need to do with Caribbeans. And so that's why a lot of times you'll see Obama maybe Biden getting 92-5 in Philly among Black voters, and maybe in Florida it's like 87-11, and it's because that Caribbean vote's just a little different kind of vote.
So you played two roles for me on election night in recent years. One is I was sitting on the panel at Yahoo with Katie Couric in 2016, and I called you on the phone and I said, or texted you, and I was like, so, what's happening in Florida? And you just said, it's done. It's over. It's done. It's done. Like, you were the first person I talked to who was looking at numbers. And then again, this happened. We saw each other in 2018. We were at Andrew Gillum's victory night, quote unquote, in the governor's race, and it didn't work out. So when you're looking at numbers, on as we get closer to the election and election days, what is it that you're tracking that gives you a sense about how a particular state is actually performing?
Well, I mean, listen,
use Florida as an example.
Yeah, I mean, in Florida is just kind of what I know. I don't know much in life, but I'm pretty decent about this. Marginal at least. I mean,
you got a track record.
The thing is, first of all, we're going to have maybe 75% of our vote already cast. So the time you and I are doing this interview, 3.6 million Floridians have already voted. So I mean, we're probably going to be between 10.5 and 11 million total. So the first thing is like we're going to have a real good sense before election day, both what is in the pot, sort of like what's already been voted, maybe 7.5, 8 million votes total. And we kind of know what's left. Florida's election files are really good. We kind of know like who hasn't voted, what their voter history is. And so you can kind of model out what's going to happen going forward. And, there's a handful of places in the state that are pretty good indications. And so the thing for me last cycle, there's a county on the East Coast, Volusia County, Daytona, used to be, as you know, kind of an old sort of suburban, sort of ex-urban, blue collar, manufacturing, kind of labor Democrat kind of place that has trended a little Republican. Well, we won it in 08, we lost it by a little bit in 12, and she just got, frankly, curb stomped there. And, and so for me, I think there's a couple of things. It's looking at again, the other thing for your viewers is Florida will report all these early and absentee votes within about 15 minutes of the polls closing. So we're going to have 7 or 8 million votes in like this.
So Florida counts absentees on election day, real time.
So it's in real time in Florida. So when your ballot comes into your office right now, the canvassing board reviews it. They check the signature. If it counts, I mean, if it matches, they literally feed it in the machine.
And so then, how long does Florida keep counting votes after election day?
No. So with the one exception, your vote by mail ballot has to be in by 7 o'clock. Now, if your ballot has an error, so let's say you are a vote by mail ballot, say your signature didn't match or your address was off, you have 3 days after the election to go cure the ballot, as they would call it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you have to be. I think this year they're saying like if you're in line at a drop box, you can do it after 7. But it basically has to be in by 7.
Okay.
So we're gonna know.
So we'll have the Florida numbers in on election night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I mean, and I'll get for you, there's a handful of counties that I think will be pretty good indications. For example, Pinellas County, St. Petersburg, it's almost entirely a vote by mail county. So you're probably going to have 85% of that county in. It was a place that we won twice. Trump won in 2016. If that early number has us up 8, 9, 10 points, like that's probably a pretty good indication. Last cycle it didn't. And that was one of those where I was like, ooh. But
yeah,
it's bad, man. Like you reminded me of all these calls that I had used alcohol to forget.
your phrase that pays is, I'm not saying it's over. I'm just saying the path is very narrow. I think that was like you're like get out of jail in case I'm wrong, but just let me tell you, like get ready for a long night. It's gonna be a long night.
Yeah. So, but the good news, man, if we do our work down here, and knock on wood, we will. I think we can also sort of all the shenanigans we worry about with Trump go away if we win Florida on election.
Oh, so let me ask you this. This is also the last thing. Bloomberg, how's the Bloomberg money playing?
I mean, I think they're doing a couple things really well. I mean, first is just the investment on TV is forcing Trump to really kind of redouble his efforts here. It's frankly like my organization, we had begun to invest in Florida, and when Bloomberg spent all his money, we went and spent it everywhere else. I mean, so it's allowed everybody, all the outside groups to go really, really spend money in the other states. The other thing they've done, which I think has been really, really helpful, is Jamal, there's a bunch of really, really great sort of on the ground grassroots organizations like For a Future, Florida New Majority, Somos, which does Latino organizing, and the Bloomberg folks have invested significantly in grants to allow those organizations to continue doing their work on the ground, and so they've been able to go kind of fill some of the gap that the campaign from not doing in-person campaigning, and so as Rich Davis, the TV guy, said the other day, it's a little bit like Brewster's Millions, but great movie, folks haven't seen it. It's allowing the rest of us to go spend money elsewhere, and I think it is really helping on the ground.